All right, very brief video today. We just want to introduce some angles as rotations. Some definitions real quick, so jot these down. The initial side, the terminal side, and an angle of rotation that's in standard position. The initial side of an angle of rotation is the beginning, so the initial where it starts. The terminal side is the side that completes it. So, you know, when you take a flight and you end up at the terminal, that's where your flight ends. If you're at the terminal and your flight's over, so that's the way I like to remember. An angle of rotation in standard position is when the initial side is on the positive side of the x-axis. So let's just define all of that stuff and see exactly what it means and draw a picture on it. And if you didn't jot that down, you can rewind it and pause. So what we can do is draw an angle of rotation. An angle of rotation can look something like this. Now, we don't know what the positive, what the initial or the terminal side here is, because we're not describing the motion. If we describe the motion here, that means I am beginning with something that looks like this, and I'm rotating and stopping there. So this is indicating the direction of travel, which means we're beginning here. This is the initial side, and we're ending here. This is the terminal side. Okay, so that's the first two definitions. The next definition means that if we're putting it on the coordinate axis, then this initial side is lying in a specific spot. So let's draw a coordinate plane, and let's put an angle of rotation on a coordinate plane. Two-sided arrow here, two-sided, okay. So here's my x and y axis. If I want to list an angle of rotation, an angle of rotation in standard position is telling me that my initial side is on the positive side of the x-axis. So this is my initial side. If I want to draw another, draw an angle of rotation, then I need a terminal side. So let's copy that and let's just draw another one here. Let's see, lines, okay, so. Now here is our angle of rotation. Again, we don't know the direction here because we don't indicate a direction of travel. So now here we go. This is an angle of rotation in standard position because the initial side lies on the x-axis on the right. This is the terminal side because this is where it completes. The angle of rotation in this case is some unknown measure, theta. So now there are a bunch of types of angles of rotation. As you can see, this angle can move in any direction from the initial side. So now, if I am starting here, I can travel in this direction, or I can travel in this direction. That direction of travel is telling you whether it's a positive angle of rotation or a negative angle of rotation. A positive angle of rotation travels counterclockwise. A negative angle of rotation, again, we're in standard position, so we're starting on the positive side of the x-axis. A negative angle of rotation rotates down. So this would be a negative angle of rotation. And the way I like to remember it, because you start going down in a negative y direction. If we start going up in a positive y direction, then that's a positive angle of rotation. So depending on where this ends up, there are first quadrant angles, there are second quadrant angles, there are third quadrant angles, there are fourth quadrant angles. So now notice that I traveled in a positive direction each of these times. So you may be saying, well, what if it is just on the axis? Well, that's called a quadrantal angle. And that's just a multiple of 90 degrees. So some examples of quadrantal angles would be 90, 180, 270, and 360. But if we were to travel in a negative direction, negative 90, negative 180, negative 270, and negative 360 are also quadrantal angles because they don't lie in a quadrant. They lie on the axis. So now let's just practice listing some angles of rotation. Let's practice drawing some angles of rotation. So let's sketch an angle of rotation in a positive and negative direction. Sketch an angle of rotation in standard position of 130 degrees. Well, since it's in standard position, that means I need to set up an axis. So let's do that. Set up an x and a y axis. X and y. X, y. Since it's in standard position, that means my initial side is on the positive side of the x-axis. And I want to rotate 130 degrees. And the way to remember this is that each quadrant is 90 degrees. Now you're just trying to get it in the correct quadrant. So if I rotate until here, that's 90. If I continue all the way around, that's 180. So it's going to be somewhere between there. That's just about an angle of rotation of 130 degrees. It's close enough. It just has to be in the second quadrant pretty much. If I had changed this to negative 130 degrees, well, it's still in standard position, so I'm still starting on the positive side of the x-axis. But now I'm rotating down 130 degrees. Remember that each axis is 90 degrees, so that's 90 and that's 180, so I'm somewhere between here. So I'm going to draw my angle right there. Remember to indicate the direction that you're traveling in. This is showing me that this is a negative angle rotation because we're traveling down. One more thing to learn here, and that's what a coterminal angle is. Now let's think about what that word coterminal is saying to us. Well, we know what the terminal side of an angle is. The terminal side is the ending angle rotation. So right here, this is my terminal side. Or down here, this is my terminal side. So coterminal means shared terminal side. So let's sketch an angle of rotation of let's say that we have an angle of negative 100 degrees. Then let's determine what some coterminal angles are. So let's sketch that angle of 100 degrees, negative 100 degrees. Negative 100 means we're traveling down. This is 90, so we're going to go a little bit past that. Remember, we're in standard position, so we're starting on the positive side of the x-axis. Negative 100 means down. Well, that's 90. Go a little bit more. So that's our angle of rotation. This is negative 100 degrees. The coterminal angle is any angle that'll end up at the same spot. So I like to say that it's the other angle. So if we're going down 100 over here, we could have went up and around to get to there. So this is an example of a coterminal angle. Just remember, if we go around in a whole circle, it's 360 degrees. So together, coterminal angles make up 360 degrees. So if this is negative 100, then this is positive 260. If you're traveling in different directions, the coterminal angle will be the opposite sign. But that doesn't always have to be the case. Some other examples of coterminal angles. Well, if it's negative 100, I could have went around another 360 degrees. So just to list the coterminal angles, so far we found 260 degrees is a coterminal angle. So let's get rid of this 260 and show some other coterminal angles. We started with, I don't know where that came from. We started with negative 100. We already found that 260 is a coterminal angle. Well, what if I want to travel in the same direction and say, all right, let's end up at the same spot. Well, yeah, it's a coterminal, but it's the same angle, negative 100. What if I want to continue going around? Well, let's take a look at that. If we went from here all the way around, that's 360 degrees. I went another 100. So another coterminal angle could be negative 460 degrees. Well, what if I want to travel in a positive direction more than 260 degrees? Well, let's get rid of this and travel in a positive direction another 360 degrees. So this was a coterminal angle which we already found. That was 260 degrees. Let's go around another 360. Well, that's another coterminal angle, as long as it ends up at the same spot. So the story here is that these coterminal angles, whether it's 260 degrees or negative 460, if you continue traveling another 360 degrees, that will also be a coterminal angle. So let's determine how many degrees this is. So we're starting here, that's 0 degrees, 90, 180, 270, 360, 450, 540, and then a little bit more, okay? So we went 260 and another 360 for a total of 620 degrees. And there we go. This is, coterminal angles is the other angle. An angle of rotation in a positive direction is moving up. An angle of rotation in a negative rotation is moving down. A quadrantal angle ends up on a quadrant. The terminal side is where the angle ends. The initial is where it's starting. The coterminal angle just means it's ending at the same terminal spot.